Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I'm back today chatting with Emma Denley. Hello Emma.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. A little bit cold. How are you?
Yes, it was -9 this morning in Devon. So it was I've got no water in my house because the pipes are all frozen. So that's a great start to the day.
Lovely start.
Well, it's due to rain at the weekend, so we'll have a bit of a change, I imagine.
Let's hope. Even 5 degrees seems warmer than right now. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. So today's podcast, we are going to be talking about a new trip we are launching in just a few days' time on Boxing Day. And Emma and I had the opportunity to go on what they call a fam trip or a familiarization trip. And we went to Cappadocia. And now Cappadocia has been on my bucket list for a long, long time. And some people might not know where Cappadocia is, but they've probably seen pictures of it. Don't you reckon, Emma?
Yes, that's how I first discovered it, I have to admit, on Instagram. I think probably a couple of years ago now, it just suddenly made this huge sort of appearance on Instagram. Lots of people know it primarily just for the hot air balloons and just how kind of pretty it is as an area, so photogenic. And it's just, I think, tourism in the area has just massively, massively increased via social media, I think. They'll admit that as well.
Yeah, and I think, running a company called the Bucket List Company, we're always sort of looking around and seeing, Instagram's great for us, seeing what sort of destinations are trending, because obviously if a destination's trending, then it becomes a bucket list destination. Then it's on, people want to go there. And Cappadocia is a region to the east of Turkey. And it's I actually learned quite a lot about Turkey on this trip. I mean, you learned where the capital was. That was the first thing you learned.
And you know what? I've spoken to a couple of people about this since, and everyone I've spoken to has thought Istanbul was the capital. So it's not just me.
Well, for the people listening, Emma, and they're thinking the same as you. I always thought Istanbul was the capital. Do you want to inform people what is the capital of Turkey?
Let's hope I can remember. It's Ankara.
It is Ankara, yes. So the one thing that I learned is that actually Turkey is split between Europe and Asia, and Istanbul has a river running straight through it. Part of Istanbul is in Europe and part of Istanbul is in Asia, but Cappadocia is actually in the Asian side of Turkey. We went on a pretty quick fam trip. We were only there for 6 days, and we kind of crammed an awful lot into those 6 days. And the trip we've designed is an 8-day trip to try and spread things out a little bit and make it a little bit more relaxed. So what we thought we'd do today is just tell you about Cappadocia, tell you about Istanbul, tell you about the trip that we went on, and then talk about what we've put together for the trip and why we feel that Cappadocia should be on your bucket lists as well. So do you want to just start then, Emma, and just talk through what we did on the fam trip, leaving from London, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, definitely. So we flew from London to Istanbul. Unfortunately, Istanbul was a little bit rainy, which was probably the only negative of the whole trip, but it didn't even really matter too much because on our first day there, we went on a walking tour, which I think is always the best way to see a city. So you get kind of a local who will take you around, and it was really nice. It was just the two of us. So we really just got like that intimate guided experience, I suppose. So we saw some of the main sites, which was the Basilica Cistern, which was really, really cool. We both learned that that's where the toilet cistern comes from, because where they used to store all the water underground in Istanbul. And actually now they use it as kind of an art display. So that was really, really cool. There's lots of amazing mosques in Istanbul. So we got to see some of those. Obviously, they have really kind of intricate interiors, amazing exteriors. So it was very cool to get to see those. Tried some of the different foods. the baklava, which was amazing. And then dishes, they had lots of different kind of dishes that they cook in clay pots, casseroles, chicken sheesh, all those different sort of Turkish cuisine main dishes that you think of. So that was really delicious, I'd say. That was my favorite bit. What else did we do? You have to remind me.
So, I mean, in terms of getting to Turkey, it's super simple from London.
Yeah. 3.5 hour flight.
3.5 hour flight. Now, the thing that, like, I went to Turkey in the summer, and I'm sure we were only an hour ahead in Turkey when I went there in the summer. But the surprise for me was actually...
Look this up in the end.
I didn't look it up. I forgot to look it up. I've only just remembered it. But the surprise for me was the fact that we were 3 hours ahead in Turkey than we were in the UK. So we flew it kind of, well, we were delayed flying. We took off about 10:30, something like that. Mm-hmm. But we actually arrived then in like Istanbul in like 5 o'clock in the evening after only being on so it felt really weird from my perspective I only seemed to have just got on the plane in the morning, been on a really shortish flight, but then got to my destination. It was almost like flying further, it felt like.
Yeah, I agree. You do feel like you almost should be getting jet lagged, even though it's only, well, it was a 3 hour time difference, wasn't it? And I think it particularly because we were flying and we were there in winter, obviously the sun sets a lot earlier. So we arrived in the darkness, even though it was only kind of 5 o'clock. Whereas had it been another time of year, maybe it would have been less noticeable. But I think, yeah, we definitely both felt confused. You'd lost your whole day.
Yeah. So like you say, when we got there, we were kind of in the fairly touristy area when we stayed in Istanbul. And I felt it was definitely European where we were staying, I felt.
Yeah, but I do also think it was definitely the best area to stay in. I think you could easily walk out to restaurants, you could walk to all the main kind of tourist sites, the shopping bazaars, like all of that sort of stuff. I definitely think that sort of European side was the best place to be based.
Yeah, because we on day 2 of the trip, we got taken to the Grand Bazaar, didn't we? And that kind of blew us both away in terms of, imagine the Moroccan souk, but almost like a 5-star version of the Moroccan souk is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I was so impressed and surprised by almost the organization of it all. Because I think the souks in Marrakesh are hectic and crazy and vibrant and all those sort of things that you always expect from a market like that. And the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul was a much posher, organized version. You could almost say a lot of storefronts, sellers kind of trying to entice you in, but also not really hassling you in any way at all. And then, yeah, I think a lot of the locals, we were told, do shop there as well. So maybe that's part of it. It's not just for tourists. You do find a lot of local shopping there. So that was actually really nice that, it is the shopping destination and they're not going to just charge tourists an extortionate amount or have really bad products that are just kind of tourist traps, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, what was it we were told? There were 4,000 different shops in the Grand Bazaar. It's
crazy because so many of them all sell the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how many sales they really do make, but yeah, we spent a lot of time there actually just getting lost amongst all the stores. We went back on our last day as well to do some shopping. So that was a really, really cool experience because they have the food, they have Turkish delight, they have spices, they have
gold.
They were selling blocks of gold coins, a lot of gold jewelry, fakes that you get in Turkey, all of those sort of things. So yes, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, if you wanted your fake Rolex, you could definitely find one in the bazaar, can you? So the other thing that I didn't know about Istanbul was actually that they have 2 major airports, and one's in the European side and one's in the Asian side. So when we flew into Istanbul from London, we flew into the European side, into the main new airport. And then so on day 3, then we took our flight to Nevşehir, which is like the main airport for Cappadocia. We had a really early flight to get to Nevşehir. I think we were up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Did we leave it like 5, 5:15, I think?
Yeah, I think our pickup might have been about 5.
And then, which actually in the end, I think was perfect, because it was about a 40-minute transfer across the river over into the Asian side and into the other airport in Istanbul. And then the flight was 40 minutes, I suppose. I mean, it didn't seem like we had reached altitude before we were dropping back down again to get there. But
I don't think we even got to take our seatbelts off. It was so quick, like straight up.
I think they threw a thing of water at us as the cabin crew came up, and then they kind of took their seats again, didn't they? But you can fly to Cappadocia, or there are quite a lot of people who take the bus from Istanbul to Cappadocia, but we didn't have a lot of time in country. And actually, when you look at it, it's either 9.5 hours on a coach, or it's a 40-minute flight. So I think, we definitely took the correct option there. But also we started our tour of Cappadocia like at 10 in the morning. Like, we literally got off the aeroplane. It was the smallest airport you've ever seen. I found it really funny how, like, you walked into the airport terminal, and there was kind of one baggage carousel that was connected to the wall you had just come through. And the guys were literally just putting the bags on, and they were doing this little short kind of trip down to you. They could just given you your bag when you got off the plane, I think.
Yeah, we may as well have just picked them up from there. But yeah, exactly. And that was what was nice at getting such an early flight, because you wouldn't have done anything in Istanbul that morning anyway. And then, we carried straight on with our tour. So from 10 o'clock, we were out and about and sightseeing in Cappadocia, which would have been the time we would have been picked up in Cappadocia or any other day. That was kind of our pickup time as well. So it worked really well that you did have that full day there to fit everything in.
Yeah, and I think if you went to try and find Cappadocia on a map, you wouldn't really find Cappadocia, would you? Because Cappadocia is the area. There isn't a place there isn't a town called Cappadocia. It's the area that you go to, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's quite confusing as well, because there are different options. Obviously, people say you've got to get to Istanbul and then you can get the bus, you can fly, but it's not necessarily clear where you even fly to or which bus you're catching. And that's it. A lot of people do the overnight bus, but then where are you trying to get to? Because Cappadocia is a region, almost like a county that we'd have here. So there's lots of different towns you can stay in, which count as part of Cappadocia. So I definitely don't think it's necessarily the easiest place or the clearest place to get to, perhaps.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you go onto Skyscanner and type in Cappadocia, it's not going to come up with Cappadocia Airport, for example, is it? Like, that's the. So what did we do on that first day in Cappadocia then?
So we went straight from the airport out sightseeing. So we headed to see some of the really typical fairy houses that they have in the region. So these are basically houses built out of stone and caves that people lived in thousands of years ago, and that have been just really well kept over the years. They've built kind of open air museums, they're calling them, in the region, basically to show off the different villages that once existed. So you can see where they had churches, where they had homes, where they had schools. It's crazy, even some of the churches and things like that have artwork still kind of carved into the walls. And yeah, we're talking kind of 2,000 years ago that these were kind of being lived in. So it's so crazy how well kept it still is, I thought. So yes, we saw a few of the different open air museums and the fairy houses.
And you do, I learned quite a lot about the history of Turkey I
didn't know anything about it before
on this trip, in terms of, how it used to be a Christian country. I mean, that was the surprise for me when we went, heading back to Istanbul quickly, but when we went to the mosque there, which was originally built as a Christian church, and now it's being used as a mosque.
Yeah, and it still has images of Jesus and crucifixes and still things like that on they said they wouldn't have it in the kind of the inside of the kind of prayer rooms, but on the outside of the building, in the corridors, things like that, it still has lots of Christian symbols, which is crazy to me. I had no idea either.
And even some of the paintings inside the mosque have just been covered with a white cloth to cover them up. They're still there. Then they haven't got rid of them. They do still exist.
Yeah, it's crazy because it seems like such a small percentage of the population now that are part of kind of Christianity.
But when I originally decided that Cappadocia was on my bucket list, there were two things that I thought that I really wanted to do in Cappadocia. And one of those was stay in a cave hotel. And the second was obviously to do the hot air balloon ride. Once we'd done a bit of sightseeing and seen some of Cappadocia, we went to Zalve, we went and saw them making pottery, and then we got taken to the hotel that we were being put up in. And just to explain that, a lot of the hotels in the region are actually built literally into the caves, aren't they?
Yeah, it's so cool. I've never seen anything like it. It's just amazing. They kind of all are part of the landscape, I suppose. So they kind of go right back into the caves, all of the rooms, the restaurants, that sort of thing. And it's really nice because then it does feel like it's still very natural within the environment as well. It's nothing too modern, touristy, anything like that. It really is in keeping with the landscape. Yeah, the cave hotels are amazing. And
like the one that we got put up in was kind of slightly a little bit out of like where things were happening, weren't they? Like when we've designed our trip to go back and launch our bucket list trip. Like we want our groups to be staying in Garem because there was a lot more going on there than where we were, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's when we say you wouldn't know where to stay in Cappadocia because there are a few towns. That's actually the town you do want to stay in because there's shops, restaurants, hotels, everything kind of walking distance. For us being further out, our hotel was amazing, and it worked well because we were only there for such a short amount of time. It didn't matter so much, but definitely I think it's better to be in Grammy where you can walk out to just a few more things. There's more going on.
Yeah, like, where the hotel we were in, like we had to have dinner in the restaurant there, didn't we? There wasn't restaurants within walking distance, but these cave hotels, like the choices that, they've properly done them really nicely. Like some of them have got like jacuzzi baths in them. They've got saunas in the rooms, and they keep that a constant temperature throughout the day. So your hotel room, although, it does have heating, but even if you went to a cave hotel in August, it would still only be 15 degrees, between 13 and 15 degrees inside your room if you kept the heating off.
Yeah, exactly. It's very well done. And they also have pretty much all of the hotels that we saw had really nice terraces because they know that a lot of people come for the balloons and the views and all that sort of thing. So they're really well set up in that they have terraces and tables outside and things like that. So you always have pretty much, I think, wherever you stay, you always have an amazing view of the area as well, which is great.
And then that afternoon, then we got picked up and we got taken out to now, I was a little bit worried about this because I don't think I've sat on a horse for about 20 years, but we went out for a sunset horse riding excursion through the landscape. I actually really enjoyed it.
I loved it. I thought it was so fun. It was perfect time of evening. It was getting a bit chilly, but again, we were there in winter, but you got kind of the sunset. There were a few others out kind of horse riding as well. We didn't go very fast, so it was great. Any beginner could go on it. There's no sort of experience needed. And we were in a really small group as well, which is really nice. We got to stop in the middle, got to have a juice. I thought it was such a cool experience because you get to go places that you wouldn't be able to go by foot or you wouldn't walk anyway. So it was really, really cool.
In Cappadocia, there's lots of valleys, isn't there? Was that the Red Rose Valley? Is that where we did the horse riding in? I think was one of the valleys that we went down to.
think so, yes. And
So,
again, still seeing all the kind of different rock formations and fairy houses and things like that aren't part of maybe the museums, but are still there because they're just everywhere wherever you look. So it was really cool to be able to see things that are a bit more off the beaten track.
yeah, and you obviously covered, even though we didn't get into a canter on the horses, we still actually did go quite a. I mean, what was it, like 2.5 hours we were sat on a horse for?
Yeah, I think so. And with that terrain, we wouldn't, not that I know how to canter, but we wouldn't have wanted to be cantering anyway. It was a bit too up and down at some points, I think.
Yeah. Horse riding is not for everyone. And, what we've done when we've designed our trip is actually put in the horse riding as an optional extra in the afternoon if people wanted to go and do it. Because, like I say, not everybody. I mean, my thighs did hurt a little bit that evening after being sat on a horse for 2.5 hours. And it was super easy. They come and pick you up from the hotel. They drop you back to the hotel. Like, everything is super well organized, and for me, trying to run a business, I always, what it's like in Thailand, the whole thing about elephants. In Morocco, you've got the whole thing about the mules. Like, the horses were very well looked after, I thought. Like, they did look out, they were in good shape. They looked really well. Like, we went and saw where they lived, and that's where we started the trip from. And you could see that they had food, and like, I would have no problem doing that excursion again.
Yeah, definitely. And I would really recommend it to anyone who was wondering whether to do that or not, because I think it's a really cool way, as we've said, to see areas you wouldn't get to see. It's so nice to do it at sunset and things like that. It's like so many beautiful views. So definitely.
Yeah, sunset was sat on a horse at sunset, looking out of the sun going down over the fairy chimneys was pretty spectacular, I thought.
Yeah, really cool.
You definitely got a photo there for the Instagram, didn't you?
Absolutely.
So then we were taken back to the hotel, and excuse me, we just ate, we like I said, we didn't have very many options where we were, so we just ate in the hotel. But it was an early evening because we knew we had, a fairly early-ish get up. But again, because we were going in December, luckily the sun doesn't come up so early. So we actually had a lot longer in a lie-in than you would have done maybe if you visited in the summer. Because today we were doing the hot air balloon ride. And just before we go into this, like, we'd specifically made sure we'd booked the hot air balloon ride for our first. We only had 2 mornings in Cappadocia. So we've actually got 3 when on the trip that we're planning. But you want to make sure, if you're going to Cappadocia and you're going on your own, that you are booking your balloon ride for the first morning you are there, because they do get cancelled quite often, especially in the winter months. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the most opportunity to make sure you can get that balloon ride done. So I think we got picked up at about
6:15. Yeah, they came to get us. And that's it. It was, when you read things about people who go in August, you might be having a 3 o'clock pickup just because the sunrise is so much earlier. So as much as it was cold in December, it was 100% one perk from being there, that we didn't have to leave until 6:15.
It was cold in the mornings, wasn't it?
It was cold, but you're in the middle of kind of nowhere, so of course it's going to be cold.
I would describe Cappadocia as a bit like a desert environment.
Yeah, so, exactly. It's a rocky desert, I suppose you could say, because it does feel so barren all around.
And people think of Turkey as this warm holiday destination, which in the summer, yes, it completely is, the same as a desert would be, but it does get cold. I mean, like, Istanbul was kind of like 10 degrees and wet when we were there. I mean, Cappadocia was in the minuses in the early mornings and in the early evening and evenings, but during the day,
this week though.
yeah. But during the day, though, like, we had perfect blue skies. Like, and actually, if you were in the sunshine, it did feel quite warm. Right, you were still wearing a coat, but you could feel that sun on your back, can you?
Yeah, and the sun just has like a warmth to it that I don't think the sun in England necessarily has this time of year. So the weather was actually really, really good. I think we got so lucky. And that's it. You just wanted to make sure that you booked your hot air balloon for that first morning, because they never really know until the morning, because it could be to do with obviously predicted rain or even snow that they might get, but also it's to do with the winds, and those are kind of hard to predict, I think, for them sometimes. So you just want to get the first possible opportunity to get in a hot air balloon kind of sorted.
And the biggest surprise for me was, you get in your vehicle and you're driving to the takeoff spot, and like the biggest surprise for me was how, even in December, how many other people were driving up that dirt track to get to the pickup point.
I was so surprised. I've never been on a hot air balloon at all before, so it's my first time, but I was so surprised how close to each other balloons can take off. I really thought you'd need a whole huge expanse per each balloon, but no, you're right next to another balloon, another balloon, another balloon. And because there are so many, obviously they do spread them out and not everyone is in the same area, but I was, shocked. I thought everyone was going to collide. I didn't know what was going on, but that doesn't happen.
And we turned up there, and they were inflating the balloons when we arrived. They had tea and coffee and biscuits out for people and you could kind of take photos of them getting all the balloons set up. There was a lot of hustle and bustle going on, because I reckon there must have been between 80 and 100 balloons. I tried to count them, but everyone was moving in.
Yeah, we said about 80, didn't we, in the end, which in the sky looks like a crazy amount. So, and then they said to us in the summer there might be about 300.
Yeah,
which that is just crazy to me, because it seemed pretty jam-packed at 80. So I can only imagine what 300 looks like. But yeah, it's busy. And obviously it's very time sensitive. Everyone's there for sunrise. So they've got to get it going pretty quickly. You can't be waiting around too long because the sun's rising. So everyone needs to get into the sky. So our team were really, really good. I thought we got up. We were one of the first balloons up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And that was amazing, being up and then because it was still quite dusky when we were, and to see all as soon as the heaters go on for the balloons, and it was still quite dark, and you could get all those colors of seeing the balloons like light up underneath you, I thought was like, I've done a few balloon rides in Morocco and other places around the world, and like I've been up with like 2 or 3 other balloons maybe at the same time, but there was something really special about being in the air with that many balloons at the same time. Like the landscape that you were with, because that was the amazing bit for me, was the being around that landscape, and they were literally taking you down in the balloons, or literally just flying over the top of some of the fairy chimneys, and it was
so cool. And I think that's it. And I think that's why people do put Cappadocia on their bucket list and flock to Cappadocia, because it's a pretty unparalleled experience when you have all the other balloons around you too. And obviously a hot air balloon ride regardless is so cool and such an amazing experience, but to do that with 80 to 300 other balloons, that is just something that's crazy. And you can understand why it was on our bucket list and it's on so many other people's bucket lists, because it was pretty mad to see so many balloons in the sky at the same time.
And that kind of, we were in the hour and a half, I reckon the balloon ride was, I reckon.
Probably, yeah. Just over an hour, I think, yeah.
The other thing that surprised me was how many people actually came out and were stood on the hills watching the balloons go up.
Yeah, because I know that's the thing that probably people do. Say you've got 2 or 3 mornings, that's what you would do with your other morning. Hopefully on that first morning you could get out on the hot air balloon ride. But then second, third morning, it's really cool just to watch. You saw me, I constantly wanted to go find more balloons to look at. I thought they were just so beautiful in the sky. So you can see why so many people flock to being just kind of, standing on the ground, looking out at the valley to see. Because you'd only really do one hot air balloon whilst you were there. So just to kind of watch them another morning, I think is really, really cool. And because it is such an Instagram destination, you obviously get the people who want to get the pictures. And I know that Cappadocia now have really kind of optimized on that. So you can rent dresses for pictures, you can rent vintage cars. There's photographers who'll come out with you. They're kind of a really, really set up for that blogger kind of lifestyle there now as well, which is funny.
Yeah, that was the highlight. I thought that was going to be the highlight of my trip, and it definitely was the highlight of my trip. I thought it was just the most stunning thing ever, I think, and it just needs to be on people's bucket lists. And the other thing to bear in mind as well is, like, hot air balloon rides aren't a cheap experience to go and do, but they are very seasonal with the pricing in Cappadocia. So if you go there in August, for example, you could be paying €300 for a balloon ride, whereas in December, where there isn't quite the demand for 300 balloons a day, then you're down to paying kind of 160 euros for a balloon ride. So, like, bear that in mind, that is a fairly sizable additional cost if you are going to go to Cappadocia. But if you're going there, then you're probably going there to do that anyway. So just keep that in mind.
Exactly. And I just think that it was just so incredible. I would tell anyone that they have to go to Cappadocia to do a hot air balloon ride. And I mean, as much as it looks so beautiful and amazing in pictures and videos, obviously they can never ever do it justice as well.
No. So we went back to the hotel afterwards, just in time for breakfast, which was and a Turkish breakfast is a good breakfast, I think.
Yeah, I was really, really impressed with the breakfast. Kind of some cheeses, fruits, chocolate cake, I think we had, omelets. I was, to be fair, in general in Turkey, I thought the food was amazing.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, that's one thing, isn't it? Is the food is actually very cheap in Turkey, but actually drinking in Turkey is quite expensive if you want to drink alcoholic drinks. That's kind of what we found.
Yeah, it's an Arabic country, isn't it? So alcohol, to be honest, isn't even that easy to come by. We had a few restaurants we went to that didn't serve alcohol. And then, in the restaurants that did, or bars, it definitely wasn't cheap. I would put it on a par with almost London prices for alcohol. But then the food was really cheap and really, really good.
Yeah. So then we got picked up again, taken back out again for some more tourist sites.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did so much in a couple of days. It's hard to remember which day we did what in, but we went to the open air museum in Recce on after that, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So we saw some more churches and the kind of cave villages and things like that. Went to another valley, the Pigeon Valley, perhaps was when we went to that one. Again, just to kind of see different kind of crazy landscapes that they have. And then we finished that day with an ATV ride.
Sorry.
Yeah, which again was really, really cool. It was similar-ish to the horse ride in the fact that you get to go kind of off the beaten track a little bit through some valleys and get to see more of the scenery, but just at a much faster pace this time, being on an ATV. And again, it was kind of around sunset time. So you got to a really kind of cool high up point in one of the areas to kind of watch the sunset over the area of Cappadocia. So that was, again, a really, really cool experience. A bit more kind of adrenaline than the horse riding. So I loved it.
Yeah, we went. They took us to Love Valley on that tour, didn't they? We went to Red Rose Valley on the horse ride, and then we went through the Love Valley on. Do you want to say why it's called Love Valley, Emma? Or
no, you can.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to see from the photos potentially why they call it Love Valley, and the fairy chimneys, let's just say, kind of give it away of why they call it the Love Valley. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, you can. It's quite, and they've got like swings at the top with heart shapes, and they are cottoning on to the whole tourist thing, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. And to be fair, I was very surprised how busy some of these spots were for the time of year that we were visiting. So obviously it's completely off season. But I suppose it's a bit cheaper that time of year. And again, the weather is still nice. As much as it's cold, it's still nice weather. So a lot of tourists still, I suppose, want to come for the weekend.
And then that night we joined in with a Turkish night, shall we say?
Yeah.
So we got picked up again from the hotel and driven about a half-hour drive on it to get to this amazing building that again was in a cave, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But it had just been carved out so perfectly. It was a huge building.
Yeah, it was so cool. Not what I expected at all, but with almost like a huge dance floor stage in the middle, and then kind of going backwards 4 or 5 different caves that almost had staggered seating with tables and things like that. So people were looking out onto the stage, but still had tables in front of them to eat and could see other people's heads. Yeah, it was a really cool setup considering it was in a cave.
And the whole point was to go and experience some Turkish food. And they put on a show, didn't they, with Turkish dancing, and there was some audience participation as well, that if you wanted to join in, you could join in.
Yeah, we did not join in.
We did not join in, no.
We just watched, but no, it was really fun.
We were getting content for videos and stuff, but like we couldn't do both. And
England were playing, so you kept having to check the score.
Yeah, it was the last 16 game with England when we were there, and it included all your alcohol as well. Yes,
so it was unlimited alcohol and a 3-course meal.
Yeah,
that was good. And it was very Turkish. We got to experience different kind of Turkish dancing they did. There were kind of men dancing, women dancing, belly dancing, and they got, as you said, different audience members up to kind of show off their belly dancing moves, or they just had sort of musical interludes where people could just get up and, for some reason, salsa. They put on some salsa music, but that was also really fun to watch.
I think there was a lot of Spanish in the room. I think they read their audience fairly well, I think. So we've included that as part of our final night in Cappadocia on our trip, because it was really good to kind of go and experience and be part of the Turkish life, I suppose, and see the traditions. The next day, then we had a late flight back to Istanbul, because we only really had one full day in Cappadocia, because we were trying to cram everything in on this fam trip. But we kind of had a really late flight, which still gave us most of the day in Cappadocia. And again, we got picked up in the hotel in the morning, and we got taken to an underground city. And I think this was one of my biggest surprises, I think, of the whole trip.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about underground cities in general, the fact that there were so many in the area. And it was crazy. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it if you're too claustrophobic, because you do go down quite deep, and some of the tunnels are super small and narrow. But it was just amazing to hear about. Again, we're talking, is it 2,000 years ago, something like that?
More than that, I think, yeah.
How they built all these underground cities and kind of carved them all out underground to basically hide from the enemy. So they would live down there for years and years at a time. And our guide explained they didn't have much kind of life expectancy, because they never, ever saw any sort of sunlight. They would just live their whole lives underground because they were constantly in fear of like enemy attack. And
the surprise, I mean, they are perfectly carved, aren't they? It's not like, it is like walking into a marbled house. Like, they are literally chisel carved perfectly. It's not like rough carving. They've properly smoothed these things out.
And perfectly preserved. That's what I just find mad, that after all these years that they are still, like, obviously you couldn't live there now, but they're still in a fit state now. Nothing's collapsed, nothing. Like, it's all completely as it was then.
And the underground city we went to, was 24 kilometers long. Not that we walked all of that. We didn't go all the way into it, but it was 24 kilometers long and 4 stories high. And at one point, they estimated 5,000 people lived in that underground city. Like, that is just crazy.
And they had these huge kitchens where people would be kind of cooking for everyone. So people had different houses, and they had their churches.
And they did have chambers going up out of the to let light and air come into them. But like it was that was the biggest surprise for me. And apparently there's 100 different underground cities in the Cappadocia region, and they are all interlinked somewhere. So it kind of tells you how much is being used underground in Cappadocia. So we went and saw that, and then we kind of had a few hours before we were due to get our transfer back to the airport to fly back to Istanbul. And we kind of opted then just to go back to Göreme and just kind of chill out for a bit, really, and explore, because we hadn't actually had any time, had we, to do nothing really on this trip. It was literally organized for us, like bang, 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 bang. Like there was just no stopping.
Yeah, it was a hectic few days, we could say that. So yeah, so it was nice just to have, I think we had maybe 2.5, 3 hours to chill. So we got some food, explored Göreme a little bit, just had a wander around. I really, really like it as a town. I thought it was cool, lots to do. And you can see
lots of bars, lots of restaurants. Like,
yeah, you can see why it's a space for most people.
And I think that's why, we've chosen to like put our groups there, because like, in the evenings, people have got more to do. Like we said, we've put the ATV ride and the sunset horse ride on as optional extras in the afternoon. So if people didn't want to do them, then they've still got things to go out and explore. And there's still plenty of things to see, and you can just go and do your own thing, can't you? Yeah,
and there's this cool kind of shops selling the pottery that we've spoken about, or there's kind of carpets, all those sort of traditional artisan goods. So I think you could definitely spend a good amount of time wandering just around the streets there.
Yeah. And then we got a transfer back. It was about 30 minutes back to Nevşehir to the airport. And then again back to Istanbul on another 30-minute flight. We didn't get back till super late because I don't think we flew till about 8:30 in the evening, I think. So by the time we got back to Istanbul into the hotel, it was probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. And then we had a few out. I think we were flying back to the UK about 1 o'clock the following 4 o'clock the following afternoon, but we were getting picked up at 1 o'clock. So we just had a few hours in the morning to have a wander around Istanbul again on our own without the need of a guide.
Yeah, it was nice. We could get up, because when you're following a guide, you don't always get your bearings, I don't think, so well. So it was nice just to be able to explore it ourselves and get our bearings a little bit. And it wasn't raining, so that made things a little bit easier for us as well. I really, really liked Istanbul as a city. I thought it was very cool, very kind of cosmopolitan, multicultural, lots going on. I thought it was a very cool city.
Yeah, so much to do. So if you had to pick out your 3 highlights then from the trip, what would they be?
Well, without a doubt, the hot air balloon, that's a highlight of my life. But yes, that'd be a highlight of my trip. Definitely number 1. I think I really like the horse riding. I thought that was really cool. It is very similar to the ATV in the concept that you do it at sunset and you go through different valleys. So I suppose it's more just if you prefer kind of the horse riding aspect with the animals or the sort of more adrenaline side of the ATV. So for me, I prefer the horse riding from the 2, but both are amazing. It's hard to pick between them, but I'd say the horse riding. And then my 3rd highlight, what would that be? Probably walking through the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, because there was just so much to see and kind of process, and you could have just spent days walking around there. So I thought that was really, really cool. It wasn't like anything anywhere I'd been before. And it was just nicer than I expected. So I think that would be mine. What would be yours?
Well, I wouldn't have thought that would have been your 3rd. I'd have thought you'd have gone for food, but
I was going to say food, but I thought that was too typical.
and just to point out, like, if you are a pescatarian, and you did not struggle, you don't think Turkey is all, doner kebabs and sheesh kebabs, and because you ate very well as a pet. Yeah. I mean, did you have fish once?
No, I didn't have any fish anyway. So the vegetable options are so good there. So I had lots of like grilled vegetables, vegetable casseroles. I think I mentioned before, but I really like the clay pot dishes that they do. So they do a whole big kind of show around it. I had it twice. So one time they kind of light everything on fire, and then they're knocking the top off this ceramic pot or clay pot. And then the other time, again, it was similar. They kind of put on a huge show with a hammer, and then it kind of comes out sizzling, and all the vegetables are spilling out and sizzling. So that I'd recommend anyone getting. You had a beef one as well, so they do.
Yeah, it was very good. I really enjoyed that. My highlights, I think I would obviously go for the hot air balloon ride for the first one. That's that it was just, having done them before, that brought it to a whole new level. I think if you've done a hot air balloon ride before and you think, well, I've done one, I don't need to do another one, this definitely changed. Yeah, you do need to do another one, and you do need to experience this one. If you've never done one before, then come and do this one, because like you'll never do another one like it. I think staying in the cave hotels was really cool. I think that was like really special. I thought that was amazing. And then I guess just being able to experience and see the landscape out there as well, I think, because I've never seen anything like it anywhere else in the world, and I don't know anywhere else like it. I think it's just kind of on its own in terms of that sort of landscape. It was kind of a bit of a cross between the Grand Canyon and, like, I want to say like the Teletubby house or something like that. It was just like, it felt like it
feels like Teletubbies, or even just like a Disney World or Thorpe Park or anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels like it's been created as part of a theme park almost.
Yeah. So that I think that would be my three. And again, you know, the food again was very, very good. I mean, you know, that's the second time I've been to Turkey, and the first time I went to Turkey was horrendous, and I did a beach resort family holiday in Turkey, and I always swore that I would never go back to Turkey again after that complete hellhole of where we ended up. So like I was very reserved about Turkey and thinking, well, actually, like, you know, is it going to be okay? And yeah, that trip just blew me away. Like I'd go back and do that trip again. Like I'd love to go back and do that trip in all 4 seasons to see it see the landscape in different seasons, really. So it's definitely one that's going to go back on my bucket list again for another time. And like I said, we've now, you know, having gone and done that fam trip, you know, whenever at the Bucket List Company we're launching a new trip, we'll go and do a fam trip. We'll go and see what you can do there, and then we'll put together the itinerary based on what we think people want to do. And kind of we've now turned that into kind of an 8-day trip, added the extra nights in. So you're getting extra nights in Istanbul, so it doesn't feel so rushed. You're getting an extra night in Cappadocia again. And I think we did everything you would want to do in Cappadocia. I think it was just that little bit too rushed. And I think by adding that extra night and by making a few of the things optional extras, I think people will have the time to kind of chill out and really get a chance to explore and appreciate it. So, but we have included the hot air balloon ride, because I think if you're going to Cappadocia, then that's the one reason why you are going.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everyone needs to do it. That's what I could say on that. But I agree again on needing a bit more time. I think we fit in everything we needed to do, but it was go the whole time. And I came back home and I needed to sleep for a week. So it's nice to have a bit more spare time to even, just have a wander around Göreme. Same with Istanbul. I really enjoyed our last morning where we did have time to walk around. Sort of, you almost would have wanted that another day as well. So definitely a bit more time works.
So we are launching this trip on Boxing Day. And we launch all of our 2025 trips on Boxing Day as well. So I will put a link to this trip in the website, so you can get the itinerary, you can see the itinerary, you can see all about it. But the dates and the opportunity to book will not be available until Boxing Day, when there will be a special offer on as well. And like I said, for this first trip that we are launching, we are including the hot air balloon ride in it as well, as a freebie extra bonus for the trip. So the first trip is the one to get on. Emma, thank you ever so much for coming on again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're a great person to talk to when you've been and done the fam trip. It makes it much easier to do a podcast, because at least we can kind of try and remember what we achieved in those brief 6 days when we went and explored it. But again, thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thanks very much. Like you said, we did so much, so it's hard to remember everything.
Well, thanks ever so much for listening. We hope you found this episode of the podcast interesting. And Cappadocia might have not been on your bucket list, but I think it really should be. And although it's probably not, it's not a multi-day trekking trip like Everest Base Camp or, Kilimanjaro or one of those, it is definitely a bucket list trip, and probably one that you can add into your yearly schedule of your trips, a nice little week away trip where you can get to go and do something. And we won't be doing it in December, where you will need a thick, warm coat to keep warm. So thanks ever so much for listening. If you've got any questions, do ping us an email and ask away, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.